For Uber, the possibility of taking to the skies of Melbourne and other major cities in the foreseeable future is an exciting new endeavour for us. However, it does not come without its plethora of potential risks and threats. You may have seen that I submitted my corporate threat register earlier today, where I further discussed in detail the threat of upcoming CASA regulations. In particular, Uber and CASA may not be skilled or resourced enough to work collaboratively to support the rise of this new technology without waves upon waves of regulations and red tape hindering the project entirely. This is a real concern, as you only have to direct yourself to the number of regulations that have come through CASA and EU regulation regarding recreational drone usage to see the impact it has caused. And that's predominantly for drones under 2 kilograms, let alone drones large enough to transport people over the heavily populated and dense suburbs of Melbourne. It is evident from some of these regulations that these regulatory bodies are unsure and vastly under-resourced and unequipped to correctly regulate drone usage in general, as it is a new area that has exploded in popularity in recent years. It is why today I wanted to further justify and clarify my decision to focus on the issue of regulations as my underlying threat, when there were and are other threats that could have been discussed. To identify what threats could severely hinder the progression and success of Uber Air, I scoured the internet looking for any and all credible resources I could get my hands on. Through this intensive research, what piqued my interest was our white pages document regarding Uber Air that we released in late October of 2016. This document is fairly dense and goes through everything from market feasibility barriers, safety barriers, the type of vehicle that is required, city infrastructure, through to rider experience and economics. It is something I presume you have read. However, what I feel like we brushed over way too quickly was our assessment of an accelerated and rather straightforward accreditation process. These are not the words I would pick to explain any regulation process in general, but in particular, CASA's regulation process. It is presumed from this paper that gaining the applicable accreditation will be accelerated due to market demand being ready, and because the FAA and EASA has adopted a consensus-based standards process for a previously slow internal standards development process. To give some context to how accelerated this accreditation process has been so far, the white paper was released in 2016. However, the first eVTOL vehicle to begin the FAA type certification process began in mid-2018, where it usually takes 3 years for the vehicle to become certified. So it is expected by mid-2021 to 2022 that the first VTOL vehicle will be certified, and that's without the FAA currently having any official standards in place. Therefore, it is logical to assume that it would be very wishful thinking that we'll be able to start trials in Melbourne by 2023, when designing, building, and certifying new passenger jets take decades and involves years of testing to prove to the appropriate regulatory bodies that everything is incredibly reliable and safe. Where at this stage, what we have is just a little more than a certified prototype. And that's just for a certified prototype, let alone adhering to the other regulations CASA already has/will implement regarding what proposed airspace can be used and which Australian authority will manage its specialized training for the operatives, all the required infrastructure such as landing pads, the amount of noise pollution these vehicles will cause, what weather and time of day they can fly, will the drones have to be flown within line of sight, and the list goes on and on. It is because of these reasons the threat of regulations has been labelled as critical, with a high likelihood of occurring. If any of these regulations are not adjusted or rescinded, they will result in at the very least causing major disruptions and could even cause in the worst case, the termination of the project entirely. Having outlined the possible difficulties we could encounter, I will now outline some strategies that could mitigate these problems. The first strategy is that it is of utmost importance that Uber forms a team within that works in direct communication with head CASA officials. This is extremely important as it will provide an avenue of direct communication between the two parties and allow for both parties to have seamless collaboration regarding the discussion on alterations/new draftings of regulations that will be brought in. It is also important to acknowledge that there is and will continue to be quite a bit of public unease to any relaxation in the current regulatory framework. This is particularly the case as the whole technology of carrying human lives across the Melbourne CBD and potentially landing in people's front lawns has people fearing that it could jeopardize their safety and privacy, and rightfully so. Therefore, we must contribute a significant amount of resources and invest heavily into public relations. We must control the narrative and portray to the general public that any adjustment of present regulation would not jeopardize their safety or heavily impinge upon their privacy. This is important as we will most likely be attacked in the media by many different organizations who have vested interest to see Uber Air fail. They will attempt to capitalize on public fear and unease by producing smear campaigns that tarnish the company as well as the new technology. It is also to be acknowledged that any relaxation in the regulatory framework for Uber Air may also encourage the demand from helicopter operators and other similar industries for the same type of relaxation of restrictions. This again is why it's critical that Uber engages in discussions with all parties that could be affected by Uber operations to obtain optimum result for all parties involved. This threat will be an ongoing concern for Uber. It is of utmost importance that Uber can work in collaboration with CASA, not only to get the initial green light for the first drone flights, but also for ongoing success and public safety. It is imperative that Uber gets this right, as it will affect all other aspects of this business venture. It also plays an integral role in the public relations / marketing aspect, as working alongside CASA will help reinforce our image as an organization that has public safety at the forefront of our endeavors. It is wishful thinking to believe that this technology will be operational in only 4 years' time. Although our marketing heavily implies us taking to the skies of Melbourne CBD by the year 2023, we must manage public expectations. Any setbacks to the launch date due to regulations needs to be considered as major threats undermine the project entirely. It is imperative that any setbacks are not attributed to us or the technology not being ready, but because we are taking the extra time and money to ensure extra precautions are put in place, as we value our customer safety the most dearly.